Hello, everybody. Welcome to Bill Neiman's Bogus Hangout. We're going to start with Zara introducing the guests because Zara likes it so much. Zara, will you introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah Alter, and I write content for the web. But today I wanted to applaud Bill Slawski for his, I think it's the most quotable quote of the month, if not the year. Writing about entities is like telling the truth.
There's only one story. It makes it easy to remember. Doc, will you introduce yourself?
Doc Sheldon of Intrinsic Value SEO. I didn't see that quote, but yeah, it sounds like a keeper.
Terry? What makes you
me?
Yes, will you introduce yourself?
Terry Van Horn, Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Retired. I was going to say deceased.
Burden on the community.
Burden on the community.
Steve, will you introduce yourself?
Steve Grenzer with Steam Driven Media and a soon-to-be announced project with Doc yet again.
Good to hear. And I'm Bill Slawski of SEO by the Sea and the Director of SEO Research for Go Fish Digital. So we're reading some interesting news today. There's a recent story about 200 ranking signals at Google and the fact that Google doesn't like mentioning 200 ranking signals. So they're going to stop. I think it's about time.
Yep. Useless information. What can you do with that? Nothing.
So
except try and list them, maybe.
The original story I read about ranking signals at Google was by some other person, and they get copied. And they're like the most ridiculous example of ranking signals and the most ridiculous proof that they're ranking signals. Stuff like domain expiration dates are a ranking signal because Google has a patent on it. And here's a link.
I deleted the title on my page and the rankings went down. Therefore, titles are a ranking factor.
It's like the laziest, there's a total lack of critical thinking going on there. There's no argument.
You sound surprised, Bill.
I'm not surprised. It's sad to see.
Mm-hmm.
So this story always brings up a quote that bubbles around in my brain quite a bit and kind of leads to the way I do a lot of things. It's like, don't waste your time optimizing for things that should not exist.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so when you start looking at the list of SEO topics, keyword density, LSI, all of these things that people want to optimize for, those things should not exist. Therefore, you're wasting time optimizing for them. Find something that does exist.
How about ranking for rank brain?
Yeah.
Like, it's just an algorithm that changes the results. That's it. So how can you optimize for
it? It rewrites the query. So
Right.
It has nothing to do with the pages.
Hey, Bill, could you
But
move
that's
your
the
mic?
old road chasing the old tail.
I'm sorry, Steve?
I was just saying, could you move your mic a little bit closer to your face? Because I can barely hear you sometimes.
Me?
No,
Bill.
Oh, God, no, not you.
Oh, okay. I don't think it's me.
I can't move the mic, but I can turn the volume up on it.
Okay. It just sounds like your mic's on the shelf behind you.
Talking through 2 tin cans and a string.
On the other side of all that with Google, they spend all their time and effort automating so much of what they do. Yet when we automate what we do, we're the bad guys. I mean, shouldn't that be part of the process on both sides?
Google has that philosophy they follow where they say it's better to ask forgiveness than permission.
Yeah.
Except when we do it, we're in trouble.
Yeah. That's a good way to get your ass kicked.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's no double standard. The problem is that what we do doesn't put money in their pocket.
Unless we're tweaking the websites to account for things they want to learn for their algorithm, like authors.
Yeah. Featured snippets, information they can sell right on Google.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting for us to get things done. All they have to say is that such and such is now a ranking signal.
Yep.
You want
Sometimes they don't even have to say that.
You want HTTPS sites? Say HTTPS is a ranking signal.
Yep, that was just a big carrot and stick thing, that.
Well, I feel the same way about page speed. They wanted everybody's websites faster because their bandwidth costs to crawl everything was so damn high. So, hey, let's just tell everybody the faster your website is, the better you'll rank. So we save a whole lot of money on our bandwidth.
And they wanted to save money on crawling, so they came out with XML sitemaps.
And next they'll tell everyone to just publish on Google and they'll index it all internally.
Isn't that what Blogspot was?
Well,
That's what Ample is, right?
Yeah.
yeah,
AMP.
exactly. That's what they tried with AMP.
That's basically what AMP is.
And what about Google websites? I mean, that are part of your GMB now. I mean,
Yeah.
you don't even need a website. You can just host your website on Google.
Oh, yeah. If
That's
someone
kind
came
of
to
great.
me with a small business now, I wouldn't tell them to build a website. I'd say, here, go to Google and do it right on Google. Don't need me.
It really does depend on the business, but yeah, a lot of them don't need any
Yeah.
more than that.
Right. If you're going to build a 3 or 4 page, brochure site, what we used to call a brochure site,
Yeah.
just do it right on Google.
Yeah.
I've
Then
actually
you can
seen
avoid-
pages ranking that were on Google.
My father had a template site like that. It was like a 6-page site. He just
Yeah.
filled out some forms and hit publish.
There was a lot of that in the early days, brochure sites.
There still are.
Yeah.
Wow.
I just built a one-page website for a client last week.
Well, the missing quotient here, Ammon likes those sites too. Mm.
Well, for some businesses, they're an ideal solution.
Especially if you're just doing social, right, Steve? Just have the website right on
Oh, yeah.
Google. If you're not doing search, there's no real reason to have a website, in my opinion.
You can get more interactivity off of sites now using Google My Business and publishing posts to a knowledge panel.
Yeah.
I mean, you couldn't do that 10 years ago with the template site. You can with very little investment in time and effort now. And they're making it easier for business people to do business and not do web design or be webmasters. Webmaster, that's not even a politically correct term anymore. So I get corrected when I use webmaster in WordPress. They say use web administrator.
Is that our webmaster /mistress?
Yeah.
Pseudo webmaster.
It's like you're Quentin Tarantino and you're doing Django Unchained. Yeah. So Google has said not to have sponsored products in your category pages indexed. So you shouldn't show things you're showing ads for in your category pages.
Yeah, but the examples that Barry used weren't very good because they were AdSense, and that gets blocked automatically by robots text. And actually, I went on to Twitter and asked John a direct question because on SEO Pros, I have above the sponsored ads, I have sponsored ads, but I don't know follow or anything like that because a long time ago or a while back, Matt Cutts said if you put sponsored, right, you label stuff sponsored, don't need to do anything else. They picked that up.
Weren't you required at some point in the past to show AdSense in iframes to keep it from getting indexed?
Early on, I don't know that's still, I don't think that's still the case though.
Because I remember
But I know
people,
it used to be.
I remember people showing AdSense on e-commerce sites, and they were showing ads right next to products they were selling. It's like making pennies off the AdSense ads and potentially dollars off the things they were selling, and struggling to get those AdSense ads. You know,
They're just sending people to their competitors.
right.
Yep. But
That's always what I want to do.
I do know a couple of people that made more money on AdSense than they did on their e-commerce sites. So
Yeah.
I get it.
What
But they
does
were
that
also
say
doing
about
things-
them, though? What does that say about their product?
Might have been.
Their product wasn't what people were looking for, but the ad is. I mean, why not?
If that was their goal.
If you're selling one thing and it's, you know, and the ads for a complementary product that you make decent money on, you know, why not?
Yeah.
Is it possible to make decent money on AdSense?
Oh God,
Not
yeah.
anymore.
No, yeah, not like it used to be, boy. I knew one guy. He was a prospect. I never actually got him as a client, but he was pulling in anywhere from $800 to $1,300 a day on AdSense,
Wow.
which
And if
is
you're
better than
doing-
I'm doing on SEO.
If you're
Yeah,
doing
when I was doing ads, I did only Content Network, and there was people who must have been making a killing because they were doing like thousands of clicks a day, and the ads were $2 a piece. So
Mm-hmm.
You know, a lot of the mobile games guys are making serious bank on the ads simply because the little X to close the ad isn't really an X, and it takes you to the what they're advertising, and so they get paid for the click.
Same on some of the casino sites. Yeah.
I was looking. Oh, that's almost all of the casino sites are for to make money off ads. When I was looking to sign up for Prime, I saw a whole bunch of sites that when you're looking, they come up before Prime themselves, and they're getting paid for sending people to Prime or Apple or whoever the fuck it is, Amazon.
So they're affiliate sites.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which is basically the same thing, only your affiliate isn't Google.
So URL length is a signal when it comes to canonicalization? And shorter URLs are better?
Yeah, that's what John was saying. But only in the sense of canonicals. Any other way, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. So one of the early papers from Google was by Sergey Brandon and Jung-Ho Cho. And it talked about importance metrics and crawling. And it said pages that were shorter, closer to the root, crawled first. That's a reminder.
Well, we've heard other Googlers say something similar, that when your site's getting crawled, that it's going to crawl closer to the top first.
Well,
That's not new.
I asked John Mew if these importance metrics still were in play, still existed. And he said, no, they stopped using those. I mean, they keep track of how frequently pages get updated and how important the news is they carry on them. And they use that information to revisit sites and capture new information. Like the New York Times gets updated every half hour. So they go back to New York Times every half hour. So they keep track of all those signals and follow them. So little importance metrics aren't so important. So they still are for things like canonicalization. And I think that's a money-saving effort too. I mean, if page speed is trying to save money by causing Google to have less things crawl, faster things crawl, than having shorter URLs for canonicalization, may save money too. When you're talking millions and millions of URLs.
I have a hard time understanding, though, how a URL that's, let's say, 120 characters versus one that's half that length is really, even at the scale of the entire internet, going to have that much impact on how fast they can crawl a block of URLs. I mean, because we're talking nanoseconds to read that URL. So it doesn't seem like it would be a tremendous impact, or I'm missing something.
I think taken that way, it isn't. But when you scale it to the size of the web with billions of pages and billions of URLs, it does make a difference.
But enough to really have a major impact on their cycle consumption?
If you're
That's just
visiting pages every day.
Every character uses memory.
Well, sure, but I mean, if you're talking about 11 nanoseconds versus 9 nanoseconds to read that URL, how many goddamn URLs do you have to read before you actually get up to a millisecond?
Do you remember doing searches on Alta Vista?
Oh yeah.
You remember the progress bar that used to show up
Yep.
after you do a search?
Might take you 30 seconds.
Your answer
Yeah.
will appear in 30 seconds. Do you see a
Mhm.
progress bar like that at Google?
True.
They're shaving every second they can.
Well,
Again,
that's
we're
you know
back
that's
to
kind of like
we're back to doing for Google instead of the user.
Yeah.
So I just want to be clear that this is the URL title, not the title, as it were. It's the URL title, one shorter than the other, correct? Because that's what they're
Well,
calling.
there's no title involved in the URL. It's just the
That's
URL.
what I mean. Yeah. So
Yeah.
Right.
short.
It's a canonical link. It's an attribute of canonical. It's a link. And it doesn't have a title as much as they want to show you the location, the address. So less characters they can have in those addresses to send programs after, the more money they end up saving.
You know, to your point, Terry, I would imagine that the impact for them of the longer URLs is probably greater in terms of storage than in terms of processing time. Much greater.
Yeah.
That I can understand.
But using it as an importance factor or some way of prioritizing crawling doesn't make any sense, which is probably why they stopped doing it.
Yeah. Well, of course, if they just, you know, all they got to do is mention it, and a few thousand wannabe SEOs will start touting about how it's a ranking factor.
For the importance factor, I think the belief was that it's better to have 1 million home pages indexed than 1 million pages that aren't home pages, especially when you're running a search engine.
I'm looking forward to all the people that have their rankings tank because they changed the URL structure in their WordPress site to make it shorter and then didn't do the proper redirects along with that, which in theory, the redirects would actually make things take longer than just leaving them as is.
A lot longer. Yeah. But yeah, you're right. A lot of that's going to happen. So, I'm going to take categories out of my URL. I'm going to take the name of my blog out of the URL.
See, stuff like this makes me want to work for Google and have my pay based on the metric of how can I screw with SEOs today. Just put out random tweets.
They got a president for that. President on screwing around with SEOs.
You're gonna take Gary's job?
That would be cool.
So you'd get rid of 200 ranking factors too.
Oh no, I would have like 2,000.
Yeah.
Which is
Tell 'em
probably
that.
going to be close to the truth.
And then each one of those 2,000 would have multiple levels of adjustability within them. Oh yeah, I could keep myself entertained for years.
And you stress the fact that 1,900 of them really don't come into play except as a tiebreaker.
Right. All things being equal, these two things,
There you go.
yeah.
Because there are so many websites out there that have a Doppler, right?
Yeah. So
Mhm.
repeat after me. It's not a hint, it's a directive. It's a
There you go.
directive, not a hint. Yeah. Oh yeah, you can use that prev next markup, but we stopped using that 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Did we forget to mention that? Sorry.
After recommending it for 3 years, yeah.
Well, everybody did it. They learned what they needed to learn from it so they could stop using it.
Well, and we as a group also overdid it, just kind of like they used to recommend reciprocal links. They used to recommend guest blogging. They used to recommend a lot of things that now will get you slapped because we abuse it. Vaynerchuk, isn't he the one that always used to say marketers ruin everything?
The Google Webmaster Guidelines said get links from directories to your website.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Easiest
No,
way to that is to do that to own a few hundred of them.
So Google is going to start showing booking links for points of interest.
Oh boy.
So if you
Well, it's actually they're selling tickets on the SERP again. So it's just another case of monetizing something that had no monetization before. Now, if there are links directly to the attraction, where you don't pay a fee, but they've got a special ad format for that now. So if you see 10 links there, probably 2 of them are not paid and 8 are paid.
Okay, so when I go to the Mission St. Louis Reg, and they have weekend tours, and the only way to tell is read the reviews. And somebody wrote, if you go on Saturday afternoon, you can get a free tour. So having a booking ad that says that is better than having to read the review that says that.
Mm-hmm.
It was a good tour.
Yeah, I have no problem with it. Like, to me, if your site is based on selling tickets and stuff like that, if you haven't figured out already that, you're in Google's target, you're a target, you're not going to be in business long, treat it all as gravy and don't be dependent on it.
Right. They weren't selling tickets for those tours. They were free.
Yeah, like
the tours are free.
As far as I'm concerned, Google can do whatever they want. It's their website. They can monetize it however they like. They don't tell me how to monetize mine, other than if it's sponsored, I have to give a no follow. But John mentioned something interesting in that any links on your site to that sponsored page don't have to be no follow. It's only when the link goes off of the site, then it becomes a sponsored link.
But it's still an example of Google telling you how you can monetize your website.
Yeah.
Plain and simple.
In other words, don't be a competitor. But if I'm monetizing my website by selling links, then I shouldn't expect Google to like it.
Right.
So, Doc, we were talking about some of the data that was in Google search results, and they were unattributed to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Some were things like lyrics for songs or automobile information. And it turns out that Google's licensed some data that they're showing.
I think Google licenses a lot more stuff than we actually realize, because anytime anyone can complain about it, I think they go and license it. So, for instance, all the auto dealers were complaining last week about the data that they were putting on Google. Well, it turns out they were buying it from the same place as the dealers.
It's like the big argument about lyrics, and Google was including song lyrics. And one site that publishes lyrics came up with special code that was based on punctuation marks.
Yeah.
And they caught Google republishing one of their copies with the punctuation marks that had the special code. And they said, oh, look, Google, we got you. The code says we caught you red-handed. And Google said, no, you caught our licensed person stealing your code, selling to us.
Yeah. Like that applies in any other situation in real life. It's not my pot, officer.
My friend must have left it there when he was there.
My friend must have left it because it was on the passenger side. Obviously, that's not me.
Now, what is this? You can get a Google penalty for bad links in FAQ schema?
Only on
You
that
have to
page.
answer-
If your fact page is loaded with bad schema, they'll drop that page.
Yeah.
They're not doing, I don't think I've seen a site-wide Google penalty in forever. Plenty of page-specific penalties, and mostly related to schema just being garbage. And I think the main reason they're doing that is because bad schema gets a pipeline straight into their system because it's considered machine readable. And when you're mainlining bad data straight into their system, they don't like that. So the easiest solution is to nail that page.
Well, the closest
Well, has anybody actually, go ahead.
the closest I've seen to a site-wide penalty was a site got they no longer were able to show top stories.
Right.
They were a sports publishing page, and their stories weren't getting published as top stories anymore.
But that's not really a penalty, though. That's just,
They were stuffing their alt tags. They were naming entities twice in their alt tags. They stopped doing that, and they started showing the top stories again.
So
but
now,
they never got a manual action, did they?
They didn't receive a manual action. I noticed the double entities in the alt tags. So I told them to stop doing that.
take them out of Discover is probably worse than a manual penalty.
Yeah. I haven't seen any instances of anybody actually getting any sort of a manual action for schema abuse. Basically, I've just seen them lose the ability to have rich snippets or to get their fact to show up, that sort of thing. But I haven't. Has anybody actually seen a manual action tied to schema use?
Oh yeah, about 2 years ago, there was an actual manual big deal where that whole bunch of people got hit with for having. I got hit with that. That's the only time I've got hit by a manual penalty, and I took over a site from another SEO who had put a product rating, right, or a site rating on every page of the website.
Oh, Jesus.
Okay. I realized afterwards that you can't do that.
Yeah.
And
I've seen that too, as well as people marking up things that aren't actually displayed on the page.
It was cleaned up in a day.
Yeah.
As soon as I went and made that change, it was back in the index. Everything was cool within 3 days.
Audited a site and it had 45% of it was just schema text. They thought they would, I don't know, make it look better by just adding structured data. As well, it was insane.
I've seen schema that was inconsistent. It caused people to believe it was a site that did 2 or 3 different things.
Yeah, the biggest issue I
They
usually
got
see
a
is
penalty because of that.
Like it would be labeled like Palmer, and then the structured data would indicate that it would do.
As a surgeon, in addition to him being a surgeon, his practice is a surgery center. People didn't like the fact that they sort of had two different purposes. For the
So it was
website.
like a hospital type environment or surgery environment, as well as him being a doctor and a surgeon as well. Oh, that's interesting.
Okay, try not to confuse them. Too many inconsistencies and they can't take it.
Yeah, no, that's true. Have you guys, what methods do you guys like to use to populate sites with structured data?
I always do it manually, but I'm not doing a tremendous amount. But
I
I'll
wrote a
do
program to do it as like a plugin.
No, Tony McCreath has a tool for generating that I have tested several times, and it always passes. But I also found a couple of other tools and plugins that would generate schema that were just fucked up as Hogan's goat. But Tony's works.
If you don't stay on top of the programs that are writing the schema, Google changes them more often than they actually announce. So you have to really stay on top of it.
There's a great one.
Some templates have schema built into them. It's
Genesis.
not always correct. It's not always correct in your usage.
That's a fact.
And you also have to realize that if you test it on schema.org on their validator, that may not pass Google validation.
Yep.
Yeah, that's true. Like one of the best plugins I found that's also available just from GitHub, and you can deploy it without actually having the plugin, is Pagely's new rich snippet tool, which is called apologize. Really, just if you type in Pagely and structured data or really rich snippets, it's amazing. It actually can convert RFT, RTF, and microdata over to JSON. It builds, if you do it with like CLI or like any other command line, you can do some amazing stuff. The plugin itself is amazing as well. I really like it a lot.
Does it work with a specific content management system?
WordPress, sorry. Yeah, WordPress, but it can be used for anything PHP if you deploy it from the GitHub repo. It can basically, we've used Composer or a number of other tools. Like CLI, if your site supplies that, you can basically roll it out that way.
Okay.
So I believe it's only PHP based.
I prefer JSON LD.
Yeah, it converts everything to JSON. So like imagine you have a Genesis theme that has microdata. It'll change all that over for you. You can actually do that with Yoast now too, believe it or not. With a couple of function files. But I've put this one on a site, and I'm really impressed with it.
You've what? I'm sorry. Would you repeat that?
Oh, I placed it on a couple of sites, a client site, and then I put it on my personal site. And I'm blown away. It's amazing. It's really a very good. If you click on that link, it'll take you to the repo and the WordPress download. Depending on which way you want to go, but the repo works for all PHP systems. And you can get really granular with it. Is what I like. You can mark up whatever you want with it, and even create your own functions. So like if something doesn't exist but it will work in structured data, you can actually create that. You can fork the repo and Yeah, it's pretty cool. Like you can try it as just a plugin and upload it that way, see what you think, and then if you like it, you can then get really like, I don't know how many people use version tracking or GitHub to deploy changes.
I know I've shared this with our stream comments.
Oh yeah, perfect.
This way anybody watching can get it too.
Also, Yoast, if you go through the API on Yoast, it can do some really cool things. But it does take a bit of setting up.
And the code looks like it was written by a 3-year-old.
Cloudflare, you guys using Cloudflare can make a Cloudflare worker create structured data based on, if you want like breadcrumbs and the basics, you can actually do it through that, just like tag managers, sort of. A lot of cool things coming with through reverse proxies that you can put on sites. But I think like if you go to Cloudflare Workers, KV, and Google Structured Data, you can see some amazing stuff. Oh, by the way, just in site speed news, I know Cloudflare powers about a third of the web, so I'll just bring it up. Cloudflare finally introduced tiered caching, which means they now allow you to do essentially origin. It basically backs up your server to the to a separate POP, and then we'll go off of that. Not meaning that it's not going to have to hit your origins often, or nearly as often. It'll just cache it off of that. And, if you ask for the beta, they will let you use it right now, even on the free tier. Incredible site speed increase. I think like structured data. I mean, what are you guys currently using for? Are you guys using plugins or using just you said manual doc?
I do mine manually. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd never used a plugin for something like that.
No.
Even for breadcrumbs and all that stuff?
Breadcrumbs is 5 lines of code.
Yeah.
It takes longer to set up the plugin probably than it does
to write. Yep.
No, I don't disagree on a lot of that, but some of the structured data.
For
it's
instance,
nice to have
an about entity. It says it writes about entities. Well, where's it getting the same as from? I'd be wondering that.
That's a good question. I'd have to look at that. Are you talking about the Pagely plugin or the?
I just looked at what they were offering, and a lot of it is just part of article. They've only basically covered one kind of scheme.
No, they have a list at the very bottom. If you go to the plugin, page, you'll see maybe in this article.
I looked at the homepage and what they listed there. Most of it was just part of an article.
Let me go to the actual URL. So if you go to underneath where it says Humble Origins, it'll bring you to the WordPress part, and you can see everything supported. Let me give you guys
it does have an awful lot of JSON features.
Yeah, it has like, I mean,
it's like 2
the
dozen.
list is too long to read. Yeah, and then the fact that you can actually go into the GitHub repo and then make your own is really cool. I love that. That's like, if you want it to be just how you structurally, just how you want it, and it has like a nice drop down menu and all that stuff. So like, and Jeff Madison, is a great WordPress developer in my opinion. Very good, very solid guy. But like, it's I think it's for a free plugin, it's amazing. And but like I mean, if you're doing everything by hand, I definitely applaud that. That's a lot of very good. You're never going to get it wrong that way. But if it's a huge site, it's hard to do.
Oh yeah, no. Most of the sites that I work with are, small. For me, even get into a medium site doesn't happen that often, once or twice a year. But if I was in an e-com site, then I would certainly be seriously considering using a plugin if I could find one I could rely on. And I have. I recently did a small e-com site, and I did use Tony McCree's tool. Like I said, I've never yet found it to cause even one hiccup. It always validates.
What's the name of it?
Well, it's on his website, websiteadvantage.com.au. Tony McCree, forget the name of the plugin, but he's got up in the top navs. He's got a tools item, and one of them is a schema generator. Got a couple of nice tools there.
Yeah, there's some great schema generators. Technical SEO has some great schema generators. I've really enjoyed. They've gotten a lot.
They've got a bunch of tools that are really good.
Yeah. Yep. And have you guys ever used Tag Manager to deploy structured data?
I haven't.
I've seen it done a lot.
Guys ever what?
Use Tag Manager. Google Tag Manager too.
For a while, Google was warning against using Tag Manager with structured data. Then they backed off of that.
Yeah. You can always tell by the hashtag after the URL. Somehow it's a Tag Manager implementation. But I think that Tag Manager has a lot of cool custom options. But I don't like running Tag Managers just based on the site speed decrease. But that's in certain situations, it's great.
Tag Manager is another one of those where they tell you to run in the head.
Yeah. Well, they give you two pieces now. They give you the footer and the header. And I don't know if you can run both of them in the footer and successfully have it work. I haven't tried that, but yeah, you're exactly right. It's all those tag tools. If you've got a reverse proxy like Cloudflare or Fastly, you can actually put the code in there and then not have to worry about these separate tools injecting more calls to the server and taking more time.
Or you can be a real web developer and just put the tag in at the end of the page.
You can always do that too. Some of the things, like you can do hreflang through Cloudflare now. It's pretty impressive what they've created because they have JavaScript capabilities through that reverse proxy.
You work for them?
No, I love Fastly way more.
I sometimes wonder.
No. I love reverse proxies. I will admit that, but I don't work for either company. I'm a Fastly fanboy before Cloudflare any day. But
okay.
I like CDNs. I like DNS too, which no one else likes on the planet. People want to talk DNS. I love it. Seriously, that's a problem. Yeah. So Shopify came out with Shopify 2.0 themes now. They just released, and I have to say it's a big improvement over the old Shopify. If people try it out, if you're using Shopify, check out the new themes.
It's not much of a stretch to be an improvement.
Yeah, it's not.
Yeah,
anything would
exactly
be
right.
But that's
they're on the right path. And when they're built with React coming at the end of the year, that will be even better with Hydrogen. That'll be really cool. But it's hard when I don't know Java development at all. Like I don't know Java code, so it makes my life a little bit more difficult. Like Liquid's so easy, but it's slow. However, have you guys? What was the big issue? What do you think of using stars versus FAQs if you had to do it on a product page?
I would normally use, if I was going to have stars in reviews, I would probably have an FAQ page separately.
Yeah, absolutely. But like if you have no reviews, let's say, on that page yet, and then you use FAQ, if you have an accordion on the page hypothetically, and then
Google will only take one rich snippet out per page, right?
You can't have the stars and the reviews.
You're only going to take one.
Right. So my idea is use the FAQ below until you get reviews for that product. If you have a lot of products that are like it's a new site and you haven't gotten reviews yet, or it's just a product that's not very popular, that you get more real estate. But once you get stars, keep the stars. That's my 2 cents. But I wanted to see what you guys thought. You are right. Like I definitely have seen many a site try to implement structured data and have all the different. It only picks one.
I had go ahead, Bill.
I think you're better off with the review information on the search result rather than FAQ.
Yeah, much more clicks. But I'm just thinking if you don't have any reviews yet, like working on a site that does generators, and some of them don't have any reviews, just put the FAQ underneath to get a little bit more eyeballs on it until someone leaves a review.
Do you think that the FAQ markup on the serve is something that will draw people to a page?
I think it will. I think it will help basically take up more area, and I think it will in some cases, yeah, because they're going to have questions about it.
It sounded like busy work for busy work's sake.
No, I think like if you look at the amount of the size that it takes up, I think that people's eyes will be drawn to it more quickly, a little bit quicker. I mean, I get what you're saying, but like,
I mean, after 25 years of writing web pages that are informative, I'm not sure that having FAQs on a search page really is going to make much difference.
Yeah, no, you may be very right. Like, I haven't really tested it that well, and you're probably right, to be honest. But it's still a feature that if I can take up just a little bit more space, I'll try to take it. But I agree with you. It's probably not going to bring people like a review.
I've seen pages with high search impressions and low click-throughs improve click-throughs by rewriting meta titles, meta descriptions, and titles.
Oh, absolutely.
So having stars increases clicks too.
Yep. Yeah. And FAQs gets more impressions but less clicks in some cases.
Because people don't need to click through to read the information.
Yep.
So you're turning your web page into a billboard.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with
you're
that.
driving too fast to actually stop and read.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense, actually. But I do agree with a separate FAQ page. It should be marked up. But you can put links in FAQ pages now, which is nice.
As long as they're valid links.
Yeah, of course.
Or not the bad neighborhood.
I had a question come up the other day. I've got a new client who has he's got 3 different product types, okay? And he was thinking about putting up a separate fact page for each of the 3 types of products. And I'm wondering, I'm my mind is telling me that Google will probably, if they're going to show, honor the markup and show the FAQ at all in the SERPs, it will do it even though it is only one of 3 FAQ pages, as long as it's relevant to the query. Okay. Am I out in left field there? Like he's got some apparel, he's got some appliances, and he's got tools. Okay. So if he had,
I would
if he had
split
3,
Doc.
oh yeah, and that's what he's talking about doing. But my question is, if the fact that he has a tools FAQ page and a separate appliances FAQ page, is that going to keep the appliances FAQ from being displayed on an appliances query simply because he has more than one FAQ page? My guess is no. As long as the relevance is there, it shouldn't. But the idea was brought up. There's another developer on the project who brought that question up, and I don't think so, but let me ask.
Definitely not. Definitely.
You could make it you could definitely make it a child page of that too if you wanted to get a little bit more of a bump as well. Sometimes that works pretty well. I think it would. I don't think you have anything to worry about unless it's identical. I mean, obviously you're not going to do
with 3 different pages. You're going to have a narrower scope to it. It's going to be easier for Google to figure out what that FAQ page is about. Whereas if you have the 3 mixed, it's going to be confused as hell.
Oh yeah, that'd be a nightmare. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely interlink it the right way and write up the anchor text in a manner in which doesn't cause any confusion to Google, or minimizes confusion to Google, I should say.
Yeah, minimize is a better word.
Yeah. I don't think there's anything that can completely eliminate it, but
when it comes to ratings too, I'd rather have it in a product offer schema than in an FAQ schema. On a page with FAQ schema.
No, absolutely.
Because then you get the whole deal together rather than it all split up.
Have you guys seen like the tools now that are supposed to be able to connect to Google's own, how the knowledge graph, you can see Facebook reviews, you can see.
That tool is over a year old.
Right, but like Trustpilot and Reviews.io, stuff like that connects directly to Google is supposed to now be populating those, your actual Google reviews, local Google, not, I guess your Google reviews in your knowledge graph, below the knowledge graph, with the data from your site. I don't think they're going to do that 100% with e-commerce, but I'll send the link out.
They're adding third-party reviews to your knowledge graph.
Validated third-party reviews, so that's why it's only a handful.
Haven't they been doing that for 2 or 3 years?
Yeah, like Facebook reviews and stuff like that. But these are like Google reviews that would be left on your site could potentially show up as a regular Google review, because like you leave on a third-party site, like let's say it's Trustpilot, it has it connects with the API directly to the knowledge graph, and apparently they're willing to trust them as much as they trust Facebook or like what is it, Yelp or whoever else is in there.
Yeah, they're a recommended provider by Google. That's why.
Exactly.
Trustpilot.
Yeah. Yep. Them and Reviews.io and YOLO and some others out there. And yeah, that's the big change. So it's interesting to see. Well, I guess they just have to, it's all for validation reasons and make sure it's legit.
They're trying different things with the knowledge panels.
Yeah, I like some articles you've written.
They used to include sentiment snippets, where they take lines from Google reviews and add those in knowledge panel. So instead of somebody's full review, you just see a line from the review.
It still links through?
Yeah, and they've been trying to choose them, rate them, rank them based on how much sentiment they express.
That makes
So
a lot of sense.
if they really like something or they really hate it, it can show up in that knowledge panel.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Like they're just using AI machine learning to figure out the sentiment and figure out whether it's, so they're probably using their own system to determine whether to over the stars as well. That's pretty cool. Or with the stars.
I find that one a little bit concerning, though. You know, algorithms can
Make
certainly
mistakes.
fuck up their interpretation of sentiment, as they've
Yeah.
shown many times.
If you type
Yeah,
I mean, I can just imagine.
rewriting.
I can just imagine a review that says something like, "I was fully prepared for this to be a terrible experience. Boy, was I surprised! It was great." Okay, so the algo picks up on terrible experience
yeah, as soon
and
as they see
bang.
terrible.
I'm sorry,
Yep.
but let's
If
give
it
it a few
does-
more years of AI.
If it doesn't get the response they want, they can remove it.
Oh, that's cool.
It's like Google showing additional search results on a page that go to the same page as the knowledge panel links to. And if the results, they're counting the clicks on those search results for that domain. And if they're getting less clicks than they expect, they might include more clicks as query revisions in the knowledge panel to make up for the lack of clicks.
Okay.
That makes sense. So, like, so you can actually just disagree with it and completely remove it from your knowledge panel if you don't want it to be shown.
Yeah, there's a feedback button usually in most knowledge panels. If you don't like something, you can often click on that and explain why. And
That makes
sometimes
sense, yeah.
It's needed because they'd like show the wrong thing in the knowledge panel.
Yeah. How seriously do you think they take Facebook reviews and things like that into account?
Not at all.
For
You don't think
ranking
there's
purposes,
any-
I would imagine 0. Yeah.
Yeah.
They seem like filler in most cases.
Just a little bit.
And
extra data.
anybody can do it. When I was looking at the penalties that were manual penalties that were put on sites during the medic alert, one thing I noticed is that most of the e-commerce sites that got hit were using internal reviews that didn't show whether the person owned or bought the product. Right.
Yeah.
So, right. That was
Customer.
in every case, that was for e-commerce. That was the big thing I noticed is that they preferred third-party reviews. Anything internal had to include that the product was bought at the store.
Right, or that they're like how Amazon says, posted by
Right. The product was
Right.
purchased by the person.
yeah,
Right.
they
So-
actually bought it instead of just making stuff up. Or
Right.
whatever.
Verified purchaser.
Right.
Yeah.
Verified
Exactly.
purchaser. That's what Google was looking for.
So
So
if
even
you
if you
add
had
that
the
text-
internals and you included that it was verified by a purchase, those were passing.
that's interesting. How do you verify that to Google? You show them your order list, or
You don't want to show reviews from people who were given products.
Right.
I think they just take your word that if you say it was purchased, then it was purchased.
yeah, that's a big help. Thank you. That makes a lot of sense too.
Yeah, if you want to know, just go to the Systrix winners and losers list and look at the e-commerce sites that got hit, and you'll notice it right away.
Hmm.
That it was, people couldn't understand how e-commerce sites were getting on that medic alert, medic update, why they were hit. And it was because of the reviews on the site.
That makes complete sense. That makes 100% total sense. Yeah. I mean, to have verified that, thank you. That helps a lot with some stuff.
But the best was always to use a third party like Trustpilot. And I would actually go to Google and search to see if they're recommended by Google.
Yeah, I know like some of them that are recommended or Trustpilot.
Some are recommended, not all.
So
Right. Not most of them
We're
are.
at the top of the hour, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Take care. Bye now.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.